Well, so I'm very delighted to be here. Every now and again during this campaign, I've come back to campuses to take part in debates. And I have to tell you, it's gone very well. I've been very, very anxious indeed to have this dialogue with young people. Maybe I'll begin by saying this. The defining difference in my own campaign has been that I have said that we need to create a new kind of society, a new kind of connection between economy and society that will define an Irishness that we can be proud of, that will enable us, the precedent over the next 7 years, to be inspirational in achieving inclusion at home and enhancing our reputation abroad. I structured that around 4 principles. An inclusive citizenship. And by that I meant that we look at citizens in terms of the inherent baseline dignity that is there, that generates rights, rather than looking at the individual in terms of what they own or imputed to own or rumoured to own. I think that if we did that, we would be looking at the individual in terms not only about the economy as instrumental, but really how does the individual fit into society. And then in turn, how the person, in fact, looks at both the economy and the state and the society and the nation. I've said that it is possible to do this and be creative and achieve excellence in everything that we do. I also felt that the kind of Irishness that emerges is one that will be qualitatively different in terms of its strong, ethical, cohesive value. And then I think that in relation to reputation abroad, I think that this is what we can do, play into our strengths, but placing them in terms of opportunities that are on an ethical structure. Now I want to say why I'm in university, that there is this point that strikes me about it all. Sometimes people in the course of the debate, I'm sure David would have had the same experience, present the state that we've come to now of having lost our economic sovereignty, of having so much unemployment and so much threat to the future, as if it was something that happened to us that came out of the ether. Well, those of you who have the opportunity of studying at third level may be very well aware that behind every speculative banker stood an economist who was in turn implementing some basic ideas about economy, political economy and society. 5 major thinkers, for example, including von Mises, a whole set of 5 Austrian people, a number of them, came together to offer a view that unlimited markets without restraint, unregulated, lightly regulated, the whole pressure to change the Glass-Steagall Act in the United States came from a known intellectual source. There are no neutrals in this, and many of the people who want us to get back to where we were, revive a dead Celtic charter, are ignoring the value basis of that society. And equally, if you are to get from that, if you are to get from Friedrich von Hayek's view and so forth that influenced Mrs. Thatcher, you must look at the values that you need. And I am saying that there are values about solidarity, values equally about, for example, that work is not work and that generates income that you can spend and define you as a consumer is one aspect of your existence, but not the definition of your person or your life. Equally, in relation to what can be achieved together, we must work in a way that recognizes now intergenerational responsibility in terms of sustainability. Also, how much more can be achieved when people work together rather than for individual consumption. And then remembering where we came from in terms of the best ideas and traditions that we inherit, as we call it in Irish and Tyler. Equally, the imagination that is there and capable of doing new things. I think that you need that fresh thinking. We need to be able to face up to the assumptions and where they came from. But if I said 5 major thinkers influenced that view that I have just described, there is a responsibility on intellectuals to reconnect the society and between political economy, restoring it to being political economy, rather than what Johan Galton calls capitalistics. We have to note what is happening. The assumptions that are there in relation to unlimited markets have fallen with disastrous consequences not only here, but all over the world. It was also an artificial existence. People going to bed and imagining that they had woken up as millionaires as the price of their house had gone up overnight. This is not the real economy. There are major sectors to the Irish economy in which we are performing. We can perform. There is, of course, all that in agribusiness, and if you take the 25 top major exporters exporting out of Ireland, 16% of them are in that agriculture resource. Others and farmers' chemicals, equally there are people right up there at the very top. In relation to nutrients, we're among the top 3 or 4. And then you move on, there are other areas. But the future will also be about services that are sold abroad with the service genius at home and the commodities of the service sold into a world market. That is about the real economy. But at home, separate from the very top, all over the country, there are people doing things in communities. There are people doing things in relation to artisan food. There are people combining different aspects of science and technology to produce new products. That is the inventive, imaginative, resource-rich Ireland that is something to do with real economy. But it is not, and I met so many of the immigrants in London recently when I visited all the Irish in London. You know, sometimes there was one rather sad conversation when I asked people, what would you like to do? And people said in Canary Wharf, financial services. And we talked more about it. And yes, there are real careers in there. But they're not the only careers. And this is what we must do. We must try and put our Ireland together again. I believe I love Ireland. One part of it was out of my own background, which is one from coming from being reared in a small farm by an uncle and an aunt, not in my father or mother, due to my father's illness. From a family where my father was in the War of Independence with his 2 brothers, who took different sides in the Civil War. And going from that small farm existence on to work in a factory, to work in the SB, and then on to the university. And I came through different universities to eventually become a university teacher in several different places. But I left that, and I entered the public world because I believe in the power of ideas, their emancipatory potential. It is when all the taken for granted things are questioned. There is no one model of the economy. No, it is wrong to have unregulated markets. And what is more, since 1937, one serious economist after another have said, no, it is not true that markets are rational. And always the argument was, when the extent and the volume of the economy globally gets sufficiently big, it will then appear the rationality. And you get an absurd position from that false logic. That is, that the economy is rational and the people are irrational. And that in turn places a strain on democracy. So therefore, in this republic, to achieve a real republic, the one is really talking about the power of ideas that are different, the importance above everything else of independence of mind, of being able and willing to question the inevitabilities of bogus inevitabilities, to not just offer platitudes instead of the hope that might be based and rooted in people's capacities. And also all of the time remembering that in our plan, in our fragile planet, that we are not alone, and it isn't our issues alone that are important. Every issue we discussed in this campaign has a global reference. We discussed disability, for example. But then, of the 600 million people regarded as disabled, 450 are in what are called developing countries. I have spent my time making the case for the different kind of society all my life, in human rights at home, children's rights, women's rights, political rights, social rights, economic rights. And a large number of women came today to support me recalling those struggles. And abroad I did the same in relation to Salvador and Nicaragua and Turkey and so forth. Because I live on the planet like that, and you take your ideas and your lives. And my wish for you is that you have fulfilled lives, not only as consumers, but as people enjoying the early days of the building and achieving of a real republic of equals characterised by solidarity and celebration and joy and fulfilment.